Hello, students. I thought I would walk you through some announcements that have kind of accumulated over the first few weeks of school. And they're kind of quick and relatively easy, but I thought I would do it via videos so you could go back and watch them anytime you needed to. So first of all, let's talk about some of the iPad Canvas issues you've been having. One of the things you always want to do is update your iOS. So anytime you get an alert to update your operating system, you want to do that because there's so many apps and programs that are assuming you have the latest version of your operating system. Also, many times a hard restart is a good idea when you're going from Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi, even in the building. Sometimes that clears up problems. And then one of the issues that Canvas has been having with not showing up pictures and submission issues, there is a reset cache option that you need to probably do every once in a while. It's under Settings in your iPad, and then go down on the left-hand column to where it says Students. It should look like a Canvas icon. And then there's a little slider that you slide to the right that would say Reset Cache on Next Launch. And we found out on 6th period yesterday, that this cleared up one of the problems of not seeing some of the pictures coming up on quizzes. All right, next thing. In your graphing calculator, clear and enter. Clear and enter is an important command sequence. That would be if you would like to clear out a list quickly. So for instance, I've got list 1 filled with a bunch of data. Let's say I want to get rid of that. One of the things that can help you go a little faster, instead of delete for every data point, go up to the top. Again, you got to go up to the top. Don't be on the first line, but up to the top where it says list 1. You want to hit the clear button, followed by the enter button, and watch what happens. Data's gone. Now you can start typing in fresh data. Here's what you don't want to do. You don't want to go to list 1 and hit delete. If you hit delete, oops, the list is gone. But never fear, it's really not deleted, it's just hiding. So you can insert it by doing second delete, and then type list 1, which is second 1, and you will insert list 1, and then it's actually back. In fact, if you had data in there, the data would still be back. So deleting a list is really just hiding a list. You can always get it back in there if you accidentally do that. So clear and enter is a good way to get rid of data in a list very quickly. Another thing that has come up, make sure you put your name on Canvas submissions, even though it's a PDF. Please write your name on the PDF in case it gets lost in cyberspace and I have to print it out. If there's no name on it, I have no idea whose it is, especially when there's no writing. Sometimes I can read your writing later in the year and figure out who it is. So please put your name on all Canvas submissions. Absences and makeup work. This is something I really hope we don't have, because it will be a mess. It will be really hard for you. And the main thing is try to be here. Try to be here every day. Because if you're absent and you miss something, it's going to be a real pain for all of us to try to get that made up in a timely fashion, made up so that you don't forget stuff, because we're only really here every 4th day for AL. So if you have to make it up on AL, it could be a week or 2 before you even have a chance to make it up. And I'm sure you would have other things to make up, and it's going to be a mess. So the AL would be the only time really to make up something. You'd have to do it in person, and another paper copy of a different version of a quiz, so it's not even going to be the same quiz, and it will likely be way later. And so it's just something I hope we can avoid, but we'll be doing it during AL if that happens. Let's talk about homework a little bit. Homework is not graded in the traditional sense. I don't give you points for doing it, but it is graded in another sense. It's graded very indirectly. When you take tests and quizzes and you're not prepared, a lot of times that's because you haven't really done homework. Now, again, there's different definitions of doing homework. When I think about doing homework, I mean you have sat with the problems, which usually are 10 or less problems. You've sat with it, you have struggled with it, you have done your best job, and then maybe you've looked up the solutions, which are in every module. The module for Chapter 1, if you go down to the bottom, has all the solutions, the annotated solutions for every problem. And every module will have those at the bottom, so you can always check your work. But if all you're doing is looking at the answers and then writing them down, that's not doing homework, and that's not giving you any practice and any calibration whatsoever to know how you're doing. So homework is just like football practice. It's just like playing piano. It's just like tennis practice. It's a skill, and it's kind of a muscle memory of your mind. You're going to see really good examples. Homework gives you a great experience component to your toolbox. You're going to see very different problems. You're not going to have 10 of the same kind of problem. You're only going to have one of a certain kind of problem, and then two. So if you have a problem set of 7 problems, you're likely going to see 7 different problems in different scenarios, and that is going to really be helpful, because tests and quizzes are always going to be something a little bit different. So the more variation in problems you can experience, the better chance you have of success. So homework is something I expect you to do every night. I expect you to write it out, put it in your notes, and come to school with questions, so you can ask me or ask some of your group members if you have trouble. It's an expectation, and even though it's not graded for points, it is for points eventually on quizzes and tests where it really matters. Speaking of quizzes and tests, it's very possible we may only have 3 tests in this semester. Because of the way the schedule is, and because I have to give tests in class, in person, I may be doing a lot of condensing and only having 3 tests. And so it's going to be even more important that you're doing your homework diligently, and you know and can identify things that are weak areas that you can get fixed before the big tests come around, because that's worth most of the points in this class is tests. We're going to have some quizzes eventually that count a little heavier. Right now we've just had quizzes that are for calibration purposes, and just to help you to see how things are going and how well you have to write. Which brings me to my next thing, which is, it's got a fancy name. It's called calibration. You know, when you used to have a GPS and you would turn off and take a wrong turn somewhere, the GPS would come back to you and say, recalibrating. And recalibrating is where the GPS has to reorient itself, like, okay, I'm not where I thought I was, but now I know where I am, and now I got to get back to where I need to be. That's the same thing. When you find yourself struggling in a class, especially an AP class like this is, college level, calibration is very important. You've got to figure out where you really are. And humans generally think they're better than they are. Humans tend to think that they're doing better than they are, because when you read a textbook and you see things in class, you start to get familiar. Familiarity is not the same as understanding. And you can fool yourself very easily by thinking you know something, but really you're just familiar with the terms. Calibration happens during homework. Calibration happens during practice quizzes and formative assessments. And that's a very important part of your learning, is taking quizzes, getting things wrong, fixing them, figuring out why they're wrong, straightening out your thinking, and getting your skills better and quicker. That all happens in all kinds of ways. It happens in group work. It happens when you're listening and taking notes. It happens probably best when you do homework and take quizzes under a timed situation. What I've tried to do is make the quizzes like a day or two delayed. In other words, when we cover section 1.2, the quiz over that's probably not going to be the next day, but maybe 2 days in the future or 3 days in the future. So that way you've got time to not only calibrate, but then fix things and get back on the road to success. So calibration is a big deal, and unfortunately, in this scenario that we're in, a lot more of the calibration is going to be put on your shoulders to make sure you really, really know where you are before you're assessed permanently on big tests. Because the test is not the time where you want to figure out that you're not on the right road and that you got off the path. So one of the things that I can just tell you flat up is maybe the most beneficial study habit of all time can be summarized in 2 words. And it doesn't matter whether you're a doctor trying to learn stuff in medical school, whether you are a museum curator trying to learn all the paintings and all the dates, or whether you're an ornithologist trying to learn all the birds and the Latin names. Anytime you have to learn a lot of material quickly, making yourself have effortful retrieval experiences is the key to learning stuff so that it sticks in your mind. If you're just reading a textbook casually, that's not effortful. If you're just casually doing homework or looking up the answers before you really struggle, that's not effortful, and that's probably not retrieving. You've got to make yourself struggle to retrieve information. And you can put yourself in that situation very easily. Even flashcards. Flashcards can be a great way to make some sort of an activity. Maybe even a friend can sit down and go through terms and go through skills and things you have to calculate and define and explain. And you have to make it effortful. You have to push on each other and make sure that it's tough and you struggle with it, because research is finding, as far as the brain works and everything, you really don't learn something very deeply unless it's a struggle, unless it's effortful. So making mistakes is part of that. Mistakes are something I love. If you're not making mistakes, if I'm not giving you opportunities to make mistakes, I'm afraid you're not going to be learning a whole lot. So you've had already, and I think you would agree, you've had already many opportunities to make mistakes and figure out that, ooh, I didn't really know how to calculate percentages like I thought. I really don't know how to explain things like I thought. And when you get your next quiz back, you'll find out that you really didn't follow the directions as I have explained in class about comparing distributions. But that's all good, because right now it's all practice. We're just leading up to the big tests. And so I'm trying to give you as many opportunities as I can to make things effortful for you so that you can retrieve information and struggle with it. That is how deep learning happens. So those are just a few things that I needed to tell you at this point in the year. I'm going to talk about grading and assessments in class a little bit, but hopefully that gives you just some more information and just things you got to keep in mind as we go through this great class. Even though it's college level, it can be a struggle. We do a lot of writing and we have to do a lot of explaining. So as always, I hope you always feel free to email me at any time if you have questions or concerns or things you don't understand, because sometimes I think I've told you or I think I've explained something, and sometimes I haven't or just haven't done it well. So please keep communicating with me. If you have any struggles at all, let me know, and we want to keep on top of it, especially early in the year. So I'll see you in class.